Welcome, and thanks for joining me for the next installment in what I call my last trip around the track, my last lectures as a faculty member at Skidmore College. Today, we're going to talk about the influence of money on presidential campaigns. A California state legislator once referred to money as, quote, the mother's milk of politics. A Louisiana senator, when negotiating with Bill Clinton over an energy bill, once very wryly stated, "My vote can't be bought, but it can be rented." And there was Mark Hanna, William McKinley's money man in the 1896 presidential election, who perhaps offered the most illuminating description of money's centrality in our politics. There are two things that are important in politics, Hanna maintained. The first is money, and I can't remember what the second one is. When Kamala Harris raised $81 million in the first 24 hours after she announced her candidacy for the Democratic nomination, after President Biden had stepped to the sidelines, it was news that journalists covered with great enthusiasm. Reporters, as they have done since the beginning of the modern presidential nomination process in 1972, have treated candidates' early fundraising success as, quote, the first primary, an indication of both the breadth and intensity of a candidate's support. Because most of Harris's donations during the first day of her candidacy were small, which in campaign finance parlance means less than $250 per donation, journalists treated this large tranche of contributions as a representation of how much support she had among Democratic voters. Reporters are not wrong for using candidates' fundraising totals to assess their viability. Political scientists, however, inject a note of caution into this shekel symphony that money is critical for low visibility candidates who need to invest in advertising, rallies, and yard signs, etc., to build their name recognition with the electorate. It is, however, less critical for well-known politicians whose image has already been carved in sharp relief in most voters' minds. In Vice President Harris's case, the early fundraising was important because it indicated to potential rivals, activists, and the press that she was the choice of many Democrats to take President Biden's place on top of the ticket. Another thought is that money generates media attention, which generates momentum, which generates more money. So there's this cyclical effect. If any other Democrats were flirting with challenging the vice president in a so-called mini primary, then her fundraising success and the positive press it generated likely caused them to show themselves out of the room. Will, however, Harris's fundraising prowess give her an edge over Donald Trump in the general election campaign? I would say probably not, for at least three reasons. First, if past this prologue, Trump and Harris will likely raise about equal amounts of money by the time this long and winding road has reached its door on November 5th. Since most campaign dollars are spent on television and digital ads, voters in swing states will be bludgeoned with ads from both candidates. Second, while many communication scholars note that so-called low propensity voters receive much of their political information from ads, likely voters are increasingly getting their information from free media, a category that includes partisan news and partisan social media. Donald Trump proved in 2016 that a candidate could win the presidency by seducing news networks with telegenic, dynamic, and compelling rallies. In short, the torrent of political ads that will undoubtedly churn through swing states prior to the election will probably only imprint on those who are unlikely to vote on November 5th. Finally, as the election season progresses, the donors will likely start investing more in so-called down-ballot races for the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. In this era of sharp partisan polarization, the margins in these two chambers are currently quite small and will likely remain so for the foreseeable future. The success of Harris's and Trump's candidacies will hence be measured increasingly by how much they galvanize the two parties' donor bases to contribute to competitive House and Senate races, to deliver a Congress prepared to endorse their priorities. Money does matter, but not always because campaign spending pushes voters towards one presidential candidate or the other, because fundraising is more important as a signal to the press than a way to make noise at the polls. Thank you so much for joining me for this latest episode. I hope to see you again in the near future. This is Ron Seyb saying goodbye.